Hello, wonderful woman of power. Welcome to my next matriarchal sermon. I believe this is number 4. Today I will be talking about healing as a woman, healing in the matriarchy. And I have a reading from one of my favorite books from one of my favorite authors. And yeah, let's get started. Okay. So, if you are someone who is on the journey of healing, you've probably have been through all the conventional Western medicine modalities, been to the doctors many times, been to a psychologist many times, maybe even visited some holistic therapies many times, trying to find that solution to ail your pain and suffering. And I hear you loud and clear, as it has been my intense journey for the past 7 years, healing my own trauma from abuse and medical harm. And I have I have tried, I think, just about everything. And it wasn't until I kind of switched into a holistic mindset, a holistic perception of what my body needs to heal, that I actually started healing. And as I've been through this for the last few years, and also studying the history of patriarchy, matriarchy, medicine in general, holistic medicine, and the history of allopathic medicine, conventional medicine, and reading countless books, I have really gotten a great sort of view of matriarchy and healing versus patriarchy. And I'm not even going to call it healing. So I'll start with a reading, and then I'll go into a little bit of discussion. The book that I'm reading from is Medicine Woman by Lucy H. Pierce. She is a fabulous author. She's written many, many books, all geared towards women. And she talks about the history of matriarchy, patriarchy, holistic medicine. She even has her own publishing company called Womancraft Publishing. And I have quite a few of her books. And I have found them quite wonderful, not only in the information that they provide, but in the way she writes. I really like the way she writes. So I'm reading from the chapter called The Art of Healing, which is quite a ways into the book. Okay, so the soul of healing. You have traveled too fast over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back, by John O'Donohue. From For One Who Is Exhausted, Benedictus. So that's the first quote in this chapter. And here's a little poem. When the land is taken by the patriarchy, where can we go to heal? Inwards, inwards, guided by the presence of medicine woman, into a place where the soul of healing resides, where the old can be shed, removed, laid to rest, and new possibility can be visioned, stepped into, rooted deep. Let us reclaim this space. It is time to dance our healing and paint it in bright colors. Which is what I think all matriarchy is all about. The word healing, meaning to restore sound health, shares its roots with the term wholeness. So if sickness is considered the disintegration of the body-mind's healthy functioning, healing is what helps us put the pieces back together. We know the outer terrain of physical medicine. It is well lit, well signposted, and well traveled in our culture. If you break your leg, Western medicine knows how to mend your bones and retrain your weakened muscles. It knows the pathways of nerves to avoid during surgery, the correct levels of anesthetic, and the best practices for avoiding sepsis. But once we move from healing tendons and bones and into the less tangible but no less real terrain of the psyche or soul, what illness or injury means to us, how it affects our sense of identity and self-esteem, into the meaning of pain and how to survive it, how to navigate the darkness of loss and suffering, how our minds impact our healing process, Western medicine gets lost. Still trying to approach the tablets and scalpels, things which cannot be seen, touched, or tested. Healing and curing are not synonymous, though Western medicine tries to pretend they are. Where the aim of curing is the end of symptoms, the disappearance of cancer or the replacement of a diseased organ, healing is coming into balance both within ourselves and with the world around us. We can, in fact, be healed but not cured, and cured but not healed. So, for example, an operation may be deemed successful because it has cured the physical problem, but the emotional and spiritual trauma that may have been caused in the process of curing are often minimized and overlooked, yet can be as debilitating as the original injury. Whereas someone may choose not to take any more medication and therefore die from what ails them, but in making peace with themselves and their loved ones in their final days, they may find deep healing even though they are not cured. What healing actually is and where it comes from is still a contentious issue, depending on our beliefs. For some, the answer might be ourselves. For others, it might be God or the body's innate intelligence. I found the following explanation a great way of stripping away these differences of belief and allowing us to see what might be needed for healing and how we might access it. At the most fundamental level, everything is energy. Energy is simply potential until different patterns arise within that energy. Patterns are like the blueprint of physical existence. Because everything is a pattern, all forms of illness are also specific patterns. Therefore, the first layer to understand about healing is that to heal is to change a pattern. It is the opposite of repetition and redundancy. When something is unhealed, it is exhibiting a pattern that we don't like. It is in a state that is unwanted. We can greatly simplify healing in that it is a change of pattern that is unwanted into a pattern that is wanted. This usually entails changing it into the opposite pattern. To heal, we must experience the opposite. We must experience what is wanted instead of what is unwanted. If our leg is broken, to change that pattern of broken into its opposite is to put together, mend. If we feel demeaned, to heal is to feel valued. If we are abused, to heal is to be treated lovingly. If we feel powerless, to heal is to feel empowered. At its most basic, healing can be understood as the ultimate creative act, that of alchemy or magic. It is the turning of one state into another, the negative into the positive, the darkness and shadow into gold. By engaging medicines, the life force, our conscious and unconscious mind, as well as harnessing the powers that lie within and beyond us. Within our current paradigm, sickness is discounted as purely bad thing because it disables the physical body and the brain. The gifts and insights that come with it are not considered relevant. And so when it comes to the inner journey of healing, we are left to our own devices. We do everything we can to avoid it rather than respect the process of illness and healing and tremendous positive transformations it can bring to an individual and a community. When our focus is solely on functionality, on the physical, then the harder to define yet no less important other realms of our humanity can be completely overlooked as superfluous in the rush to shrug off the disability of sickness and get back to normal, when the only reality our culture acknowledges is one that we can see and touch, not the intangible energy of thought, feeling, history, lineage, ancestors, archetypes, meaning, identity, and belief. We miss what makes us human, the unseen part of ourselves, the soul and the consciousness, which powers through us, is completely ignored. When we do acknowledge the unseen aspects of healing in the West, it tends to be either through the framework of religion or through the pervasive lens of commercialized, New Age spiritual understanding. The first mistake we often make is one I shared at the beginning of the book. The quick fix recommended to us by so many self-help books, motivational speakers, and evangelists of all stripes, trying to positively think ourselves out of sickness. But the more entrenched we become in our minds, and the more we try to block, force, or deny the reality of the body, the more cut off we become from our embodied experience. The less able we are to respond to what our bodies actually need to heal, the expression and elimination of what is sickening them, and building what they are deficient in. So let me be clear that whilst the focus of this section is on the soul of healing, I am not calling for us to walk away from using logic, testing, research, or otherwise applying our mental faculties to healing our bodies, but rather to acknowledge that our physical body is only a part of us, and to heal the whole of us, we cannot apply the skills and the logic of just one part. And this is what has happened with the attempted Western rationalization of medicine. The logical left brain has dominated other ways of knowing, and the body's innate intelligence has dominated other ways of knowing and the body's innate intelligence. The science of medicine has colonized and dominated the art of healing. But both art and science are both desperately needed now as we enter into a new territory our species finds itself in. We need ancient wisdoms and modern technology and theories. We need body, mind, and soul. We need to bring our whole selves to healing. And I'm going to end with my favorite quote, which I think just sums up everything. It's from a Rwandan talking to a Western writer, Andrew Solomon. We had a lot of trouble with Western mental health workers who came here immediately after the genocide. They came and their practice did not involve being outside in the sun where you begin to feel better. There was no music or drumming to get your blood flowing again. There was no sense that everyone had taken the day off so that the entire community could come together to try to lift you up and bring you back to joy. There was no acknowledgement of the depression as something invasive and external that could be cast out again. Instead, they would take people one at a time into these dingy little rooms and have them sit around for an hour or so and talk about bad things that happened to them. We had to ask them to leave. I love this book. Yeah. So she doesn't really talk about matriarchy, but the whole point of these matriarchal sermons that I do is because I believe the matriarchy is the opposite of the patriarchy. And if the patriarchy is the cause of our health decline, both on a personal and a social level, then matriarchy is the return to wholeness and vitality. And there's a little bit of history here that you might not know. If you go and you Google, maybe not through Google, maybe through a search engine like DuckDuckGo, or somebody that has not been compromised by the pharmaceutical industry, and Google the history of allopathic medicine or Western medicine through Rockefeller in the early 1900s, it will describe how pervasive and insidious the drug model and symptom suppression model of healing has overrun our institutions of health and government and social care. And so I'll give you a little bit of a brief synopsis here, but you could read for it on your own. Before Rockefeller became sort of, I don't really want to call him the father, but he took the developing medicine of allopathy, which had started previous to the early 1900s. He kind of took it and he made it mainstream, and he made it the sole primary care in modern civilization, and started to use holistic medicine. He would demonize it and outcast it. And the reason why is because he had stock into the pharmaceutical industry through the petroleum industry, which is used to make a lot of the pharmaceutical products. And he saw that there was a way to make himself really, really rich. So through a whole bunch of patents and organizing that allopathic medicine be taught in university schools instead of holistic, he slowly transformed the society into thinking that allopathic medicine is the one and true source of healing, when it is in fact the exact opposite. So if you go back, further back, like centuries back, another century back, into the start of allopathic medicine, it actually started and it worked alongside with the church, the Christian church. And it was used to, as she said in the book, repetition and redundancy. It was used to sort of, it was almost like putting horse blinders on. And instead of seeing the person as a whole through medicine, they started to see the person as, well, the mind is here, the body is here, the liver is here, the stomach is here, the arm is here, the leg is here, and it started to sort of fragment us, and then try to work on fixing the weakest part of the organism, the human, by going in and surgically cutting it out, by using patented drugs, by along with the church, exercising it out at the very, very beginning. It used many, many methods of trying to fix the person. And the whole idea of fixing the person was to make them a more productive member back into society. So when Lucy H. Pierce talks about the repetition and redundancy, she's talking about seeing all disease parts as the same, all people with their same symptoms as having the same root problem, and all of this can be fixed with the same surgery, with the same prescription, with the same diagnosis, with the same, like it all became very regimented. It created a Bible of medicine of sorts, where you just go and you look up, oh, okay, I see you have anxiety. Oh, I see you have an enlarged heart. Oh, I see you have this. And so it must mean that this is, and then this is what you have, and then this is the treatment. Like it was very A, B, C, D, E. And by following a set rule, by following a linear approach, then they could correctly guess or correctly say, well, here's what you need, and then they could provide the product or the service or the surgery in order to fix it. And you kind of see where I'm going with this. It becomes like a business model, right? As opposed to looking at the dynamics of the individual. A lot of holistic medicine, which has dated back from, oh God, we're talking thousands and thousands of years, to various cultures around the world. So some of the more popular ones, if you've heard of traditional Chinese medicine, dates back, I think, to about 4,000 years, maybe even longer. There's the Ayurvedic medicine, which is who came from India, and that region, which predates even further back to 6,000. You can go even further than that to the various indigenous tribes around the world, and they all had their own natural, holistic ways of healing using whatever local source of herbs, plants, community rituals, like that one place in Rwanda where they did the drumming and they got the whole community involved. So every sort of tribe and community had their own, culture, their own way of doing it to help people heal. And if you look at the common theme between patriarchal medicine, which was created by men, to the more holistic medicine, which was practiced a lot by women because women were the nurturers, were the caretakers, were the mothers and the community leaders. They took care of the children in the tribe and the community, so they were often the healers. A lot of them, in extension of being a midwife, they would take on that role as well. So if we were to break it down to black and white, which it really isn't, but if we were to say, modern medicine, patriarchal medicine, and then holistic medicine, more, matriarchal medicine, well, the common root to the matriarchal medicine was the wholeness, mind, body, soul, emotion, environment. So if somebody came in with symptoms, they looked at everything. They looked at, of course, the weakest part of them wherever the symptoms were showing, but they'd also look at the body system as a whole. Why is this showing up? What deficiencies in the body are not being nourished enough that is creating this pathology? And what excess in the body or in the world or their environment is occurring that is also creating this pathology? And it was very much I guess I'm going to use the same word, a whole approach to the individual. And not every individual was the same because not everybody's biology is the same. Not everybody's response to their biology is the same. Not everybody's circumstances are the same. So it was more, I think, grounded, as opposed to it was more grounded in the body and in the world, in nature, as opposed to the linear intellectual concepts that were developed in patriarchal medicine of, well, this is what I see, this is what it must be, here's the hypothesis, here's blah, blah, blah. Like, it all just seems so scripted in a way, as opposed to, well, let's take a look at deep down and what's going on with your life. And why is this presenting itself? So I believe that the matriarchal way, which I think is the more holistic way, it's not redundant, it's not repetitive, and it's not about profit, and it's also not about being functional enough to be productive in society. It is about being functional in order to be functional in order to enjoy life and to thrive. And then the benefit of that is you become more productive in society. Whereas, Western medicine, they don't really care about what's going on. Is it making you happy? Are you able to go to your 9-to-5 job? So when I look at healing in the forms of healing the person in order to thrive instead of suppressing symptoms in order to survive. And I have a great, great issue with patriarchal medicine. There have been some great stuff that has come from it. For example, the ability to diagnose a lot of diseases, the ability to surgically go in there and remove a diseased organ, and as opposed to a slow decline that the person might expect. Ability to go in and stop a heart attack, mend a broken bone. I think those are all great. But those are all emergency circumstances when you are using the medicine to stop the death. And it's great. The methods they use are great. But they have not, and they will not, use medicine to prevent what brings you closer to death or what restores you back to life and vitality. And they also will not, what she talks about, cured versus healing, not honor the life, death, rebirth cycle that matriarchy honors. And that is, there's life and there's death, and then there's suffering. And the idea of life is to minimize the suffering, not minimize death, because death is a part of life. It just is. And we could talk about the final death where we cease to exist as a human, and then we get put in the ground or get cremated. Or we can talk about the deaths of everyday stuff when we go through a death of an old pattern, an old way of living, and then we create a rebirth of a new pattern. And so we do that. We honor the birth, death, rebirth cycle in order to shift our energy into one of more prosperity, as opposed to just prolonging the avoidance of death, which just increases the suffering of the living. And how many times have you heard people say, or the data say that yes, the person has extended 10 years of life, but they're on 15 different medications. They can no longer do the things that they enjoy. Their mental health has deteriorated. They have gone into a Great Depression. They can barely move. They are now using one drug to fight the effects of the other drug. Like it's just perpetual suffering. And to me, real healing is getting out of the perpetual suffering. It's also about honoring the messages of that suffering. So patriarchal medicine will be like, oh, you have anxiety, here, take a benzo, take an antidepressant. As opposed to, well, what is this anxiety telling you about? Anxiety is a message of the body stating that something in it is not working true to form. Whether it is on a nervous level, whether it's on an organ level, hormonal level, whether it is the body responding to something in the environment that is harming them. And the body is signaling, hey, 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 pay attention. So if you can find ways to honor the anxiety without falling into it, like drowning into it, which I talk about a lot on my website, healingfromharm.com, then you can actually find the root cause and you can start to heal. Whereas what all the benzo and the antidepressant do is they take it, it's a lid, and they take it on that pressure cooker feeling, the anxiety feeling, and they cover it. And that's all it does. So at some point in time, you might want to lift the lid and then, or at some point in time, the lid, the effectiveness of the medicine doesn't work anymore because the body has become accustomed to it, and then, or over time, the medicine is creating a whole bunch of underlying problems in the system. For example, changing the chemical structure of your brain. And then that creates a whole bunch of new problems when you finally lift the lid. And now not only do you have the anxiety that was sitting there, but now you have a dysfunctioning of the nervous system because that medication was having an effect on it. So you've got a double whammy. And that's just one example of many. So the idea of suppressing just, yeah. So that's sort of the goal of the patriarchy. The goal of matriarchal healing is to, okay, maybe you need a lid on the short term. Let's find the least invasive way of helping you to resource this. And then when you're feeling stable enough, we're going to peek through that lid. And we're going to start to work with what's going on underneath. So eventually you can remove the treatment and you're you're back to regular health. That's the idea of matriarchal healing. That's the idea of true holistic healing. You will find some holistic medicine that works in a prescribing redundancy, take this pill, take this herb kind of way, and forget about all the root stuff. But you will also find some of the good stuff too. What I tell people is whenever you're going to someone, whoever it may be, for help, whether it is your doctor, your naturopath, your psychologist, your homeopath, whoever it may be, if you're going to them and they don't look at, number one, your environment, because everything that your body and mind react to is reacting to your world. So if they don't look at the environment, if they don't look at the symptoms as messages that need to be heard, and if they don't look at ways to help you cope in the least invasive way possible, run. Don't use them. They are solely looking at whatever you're dealing with as the problem that needs to be removed. And that could either be suppressing it, putting the lid on, or extracting it without looking at how the whole organism is going to live and function with that extraction. And what caused the need for that extraction in the first place. They're missing the entire picture. So I often tell people that, those three things. So are they looking at your environment? Are they looking for the least invasive ways to cope? And I forget the third one, the middle one. Ah. Oh, are they looking at the symptoms as messages that that your body is telling you in order to get to the root cause of what's going on? So those are the big three. And when you are working with those, you'll finally start to get some real healing, I believe. At least that was my journey. And seems to be the journey of many others that have been through the same trenches that I have. Whether they are members of my support group, fellow friends, authors, there's a whole world of us. We just, we don't get a lot of press. Yeah, so Lucy H. Pierce, Medicine Woman. The chapter was called The Art of Healing. And yeah, it's a great chapter. I highly recommend reading the book. And you can visit me on my website at www.healingfromharm.com. That's where I blog about my journey through healing and everything that I sort of have been through. And I provide some information on the various therapies or my upcoming book on my journey or worksheets. I've created some worksheets in regards to helping you get to sort of the deeper meaning of healing. So you can find it all on my website. And if you enjoyed this sermon, please like, subscribe, and share. I would love to see this kind of healing grow and reach more people. And if you want to support me in my work, you can go to my website and you can donate, or you can donate through PayPal at Laura Principe, PRINCIPE 76 at gmail.com. And I'll put that on the information. And please comment on what you thought of the book, what you thought of my discussion, what you think of the topic as a whole. And I will see you for the next matriarchal sermon. Have a good day.